What's up, everybody? Thankfully, Internet Archive is back up and going. It's one of those things you don't know what you got till it's gone, and they are an amazing resource. A large percentage of my material comes from there. Anytime I hear about a new book, that's the first place I check. And I'm telling you, that hack only benefits people who are right now running for certain positions that have things in the past they don't want people to know about. But I'm not going there right now. One thing I want to do is put together the Library of Static to rival the Library of Alexandria. Hey, you don't know what you don't know, and I only know a little bit of what is out there. So I would like to hear from you guys what books you would recommend. But don't go to the comments here. Go to my community page, and I have a post up there. That way, I've got everything right there in one location. So I'd like to hear what books you guys would recommend, and if you could put a little brief description or at least what subject matter it's about, and I'll look into it. I'm sure there's billions of books out there that I've never heard of. And you guys pretty well already know the subjects that I'm interested in. So between the 10,000 or so here, I'm sure it could possibly be the best reading list ever. So let me know what you think, and if it's good, then you'll probably see me do a video about it. So this was an actual article published in 1936, The Gray Peril and the Catholic Church. So we're not talking about some right-wing conspiracy site. That's about as legit of a publication as you can get. And seeing what has happened in the 80 years following this article, I don't think they were just making this stuff up. It's a little too specific in some areas. It starts off with a note from the editor that there has been and still is a gray problem no one can deny. Since the rejection of Yeezy 1900 years ago, the grays have scattered in every direction, and in spite of difficulties and even persecution, they have established themselves as a power in nearly every nation of Europe. Jacobs, in his book, Gray's Contributions to Civilizations, and there's a lot of those out there actually, glories in the fact that without detriment to their own racial unity and international character, the Grays have been able to spread their doctrines and increase their political, social, and economic influence among nations. In view of this problem, which affects the Catholic Church in a special way, we publish the following amazing extracts from a number of speeches recently made under the auspices of a Gray Society in Paris. The name of our informant must remain concealed. He is personally known to us, but by reason of this peculiar relationship with the Grays at the present time, we have agreed not to disclose his identity. So this is a guy that went undercover to all of these meetings all around Paris. And, by 1938, groups like the Lyonnese had been around for 40, 50 years. So these are big organizations. This is a series of random quotes, basically, from the different meetings that this undercover guy attended. Quote, "As long as there remains among the Gentiles any moral conception of the social order, until all faith, patriotism, and dignity are uprooted, our reign over the world shall not come." End quote. If you look around at any Western society right now, you will see everyone just being denigrated and demoralized at every single level. It's all an organized plan. And I want to clarify here who I'm talking about when I say the Grays and the people that are attending these meetings having this talk. I'm not saying that all Yahwehdians are in this little group. This is their upper echelon 1%, just like we have. I was just listening to somebody that dismissed all this, saying that, no, there's no way all the Yahwehdians could be in on this, and that's not what anybody's claiming. There is a small group at the top, and they're more than willing to sacrifice other Yahwehdians to accomplish their ends. There's a whole nation of Yahwehdians right now that oppose these Grays, so you can't play that misdirect game here. You know who I'm talking about, and it has nothing to do with Semitophobia. Quote, "We have already fulfilled part of our work, but we cannot yet claim that the whole of our work is done. We still have a long way to go before we can overthrow our main opponent, the Catholic Church. We must always bear in mind that the church is the only institution which has stood and which will, as long as it remains in existence, stand in our way. The church, with her methodical work and edifying moral teachings, has always kept her children too self-respecting to yield to our domination and to bow before our future king of Yeezy. So the Catholics have been the most powerful organization in our modern era. Kings and queens have had to appease the Pope. And by the way, just so you know, the future king of Yeezy is going to be the one who builds the third temple. And according to the Bible, the one who builds the third temple is the Antichrist. But somehow everybody thinks that everybody's on the same side here. But if you think about it, the Catholic Church was the only organization that had full-on fronts in every city around the world. They could literally muster an army, and that's why all governments have always been afraid of religions. Look at the Mormons. They were pretty well chased out of the United States to Utah, which wasn't a state at the time. Back to our meeting here. That is why we've been striving to discover the best way of shaking the Catholic Church to her very foundations. We have spread the spirit of revolt and false liberalism among the nations of the Gentiles so as to persuade them away from their faith and even to make them ashamed of professing the precepts of their religion and obeying the commandments of their church. We have brought many of them to boast of being atheists, and more than that, to glory in being descendants of the ape. Good old Darwinism. We have given them new theories impossible of realization, such as comradism and anarchism, without realizing that those theories are ours, and that they constitute our most powerful instrument against themselves. So the example I always use from academia is James Hutton, a square and compass brother. This is who popularized uniformitarianism, the idea that all these geological processes take millions and millions of years and are infinitely more complex than you could imagine. But what it describes with complexity, the flood describes simply. I mean, there's evidence all around the world of the flood, the catastrophism, but they insist that no, everything happens slowly over time. That's just one example, but this has been done throughout all the different subjects. Quote, "We have blackened the church with the most ignominious calamities. We have stained her history and disgraced even her noblest activities. We have imputed to her the wrongs of her enemies and have thus brought these latter to stand more closely by our side. So much so that we are now witnessing, to our satisfaction, rebellions against the church in several countries. We have turned her clergy into objects of hatred and ridicule. We have subjected them to the contempt of the crowd. We have caused the practice of the Catholic religion to be considered out of date and a mere waste of time. And the Gentiles, in their stupidity, have proved easier dupes than we expected them to be. One would expect more intelligence and more practical common sense, but they are no better than a herd of sheep. Let them graze in our fields till they become fat enough to be worthy of being immolated to our future king of the world. We have founded many secret associations, which all work for our purpose, under our orders and our direction. We have made it an honor, a great honor, for the Gentiles to join us in our organizations, which are, thanks to our gold, flourishing now more than ever. Yet it remains our secret that those Gentiles who betray their own and most precious interests by joining us in our plot should never know that these associations are of our creation and that they serve our purpose. One of the many triumphs of our brotherhood, the square and compass guys, is that those Gentiles who become members of our lodges should never suspect that we are using them to build their own jails, upon whose terraces we shall erect the throne of our universal king." Now, they have managed to convince most of the Christians out there that their Yahwehdeism is the same as Christianity. But make no mistake about it, when their Messiah comes, then they are to crush the rest of the world under their boot of the Holy Kingdom. Just read the Old Testament and everything in there is about defeating all of the other nations. And nowhere does it say, unless they're Christian, they're cool, because this supposedly happened before Christianity, but that's a long story. Then if you get into the Babylonian holy book, we're fundamentally different. They possess the divine spark of the creator, and we're just man animals. Before getting into this next bit, I want to point out that I recently learned that Ignatius Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, he was a converso. And now it all kind of makes sense when you think about them. They actually ran the theaters of Europe, just like Hollywood today. They ran the universities. They took all the right positions to sway public opinion. And at one time in England, it was illegal for a Jesuit to teach, punishable by the ultimate. And I should do the history of England sometime, talk about a 500-year struggle. Continuing on, quote, "We have induced some of our children to join the Catholic body with the explicit intimation that they should work in a still more efficient way for the disintegration of the church. By creating scandals within her, we have thus followed the advice of our prince, who wisely said, quote, 'Let some of your children become canons so that they may destroy the church.'" The prince wasn't exactly good at analogies, I see. "Unfortunately, not all among our converts have proved faithful to their mission. Many of them have betrayed us. But on the other hand, others have kept their promise and honored their word. Thus, the counsel of our elders has proved successful." So I hope I'm not making this too confusing, because I am showing political cartoons of roughly the same time frame that these speeches were taking place over in Paris. And while the church is worried about being infiltrated by the Greys, the Jesuits were actively infiltrating every part of America they could. They even had laws passed that would pay Catholic families to move to Texas because they needed to up their influence there. So this is a game of agents and double agents, and nobody out there is trying to increase their presence anywhere for the preservation of freedom in America. Trust me. This is two dogs fighting over a bone, and that bone is America. Next quote, "We are the fathers of all revolutions, even of those which sometimes happen to turn against us." And that is pretty much 100% true. I can't find any grassroots revolution that has happened in our modern era, which is from the 1300s to now. All of them had major financial and logistical support from organized groups. And just so you know, the mafia's whole business model is based off of the Catholic Church. You got to give it to those Italians. But while they're doing their thing, then you have the Greys and their vehicle of change, which is comradism. So I'm going to start over on that line. "We are the fathers of all revolutions, even those which sometimes happen to turn against us. We are the supreme masters of peace and war. We can boast of being the creators of the Reformation." And that is quite the boast. "Calvin was one of our children. He was of Grey descent and was entrusted by Grey authority and encouraged with Grey finance to draft his scheme in the Reformation. Martin Luther yielded to the influence of his Grey friends, and again, by Grey authority, with Grey finance, his plot against the church met with success." Now, if you've ever read Martin Luther on the Greys and their lies, that may sound like a lie. And I would have to do a deep dive to come to any conclusions on that. But if I'm remembering correctly, his solution to the problem was just ignore them. Just don't go around them, just ignore them. Now, that could be a very advantageous position if everybody else was calling for expulsion or even worse. Everybody knows about controlled opposition. It's been around for a long time. But I'll just tell you, this is where Protestantism failed, is there are now 5,000 different sects of Protestant Christianity out there, instead of there being one unified front of Christians. The Catholic Church has always been very powerful because they kept everything right there in their little inner circle. And if you're looking at this from an enemy's perspective, it's great that the Protestant Reformation happened, and now everybody is divided into thousands of different sects. So Calvin and Luther may very well have had ulterior motives. Quote, thanks to our propagee, to our theories of liberalism, and to our misrepresentation of freedom, the minds of many among the Gentiles were ready to welcome the Reformation. They separated from the church to fall into our snare, and thus the Catholic Church has been very sensibly weakened, and her authority over the kings of the Gentiles has been reduced to almost naught. Now, they have always used liberalism and the promise of new freedoms to sway public opinion, but the end result is just a different master. Its goal was always just to weaken the monarchy and to weaken the church. They started off trying to paint capitalism as all of the world's problems. There wouldn't be any poor people if we just come together and just respect everybody's differences. But now, after 100 years of this, we can see that it's nothing but promoting debauchery in society. Capitalism was actually making all kinds of people rich, and it wasn't working out as the boogeyman that they needed, so they switched over to the sexual revolution of the 1960s. And now it's to the point where the only oppressed class that they can find are people that don't know which bathroom to use. Quote, so far, we have succeeded in overthrowing most of the thrones of Europe. True statement. The rest will follow in the near future. Russia has already worshipped our rule. France, with her Masonic government, is under our thumb. England, in her dependence upon our finance, is under our heel. A lot of true statements. Just look at what they managed to accomplish with their British agents during Dub Dub Deuce. And in her Protestantism is our hope for the destruction of the Catholic Church. Spain and Mexico are but toys in our hands, and many other countries, including the USA, have already fallen before our scheming. We must destroy her without delay and without the slightest mercy. Most of the press in the world is under our control, you think? Let us therefore encourage in a still more aggressive way the anger of the world against the Catholic Church. Let us intensify our activities in the poisoning of the morality of the Gentiles. Let us spread the spirit of revolution in the minds of the people. They must be made to despise patriotism and the love of their family, to consider their faith as a humbug, their obedience to the church is a degrading servility, so that they may become deaf to the appeal of the church and blind to her warnings against us. Let us, above all, make it impossible for Christians outside of the Catholic Church to be reunited with the church, or for non-Christians to join that church. Otherwise, the greatest obstruction to our domination will be strengthened and all our work undone. Our plot will be unveiled, the Gentiles will turn against us in the spirit of revenge, and our domination over them will never be realized. Let us remember always that the future great king will never reign in the world before the Pope of Rome is dethroned, as well as all of the other reigning monarchies of the Gentiles upon the earth. So looking around at all of the Western nations right now, it's kind of hard to deny that there's been a concerted effort to destroy the very fabric of our societies. The Church of Rome was the most powerful organization on earth for hundreds of years. They wanted all of the kings and queens gone so that they could have secular power as well. So both of these groups that we're talking about here had incentive to dismantle the existing structures. But what the Church of Rome couldn't accomplish in hundreds of years, the Greys and their economic conquest has managed to accomplish in less than 200 years. They have been waging a war against people that don't even realize that they're under attack. The majority of the people in the Western world right now have no idea what's going on. They think it's just falling apart. It's just bad management and incompetence. No, this has all been by design. You know, they love to talk about sustainability. Well, society has been sustainable since the dawn of time, basically. And basically anything that they say that they are going to help out or improve, that's what they're planning to destroy. And until people start realizing that this isn't just an accident, that this is on purpose, then nothing's going to change. And like I said earlier, they have been behind every revolution of our modern era. But when you don't even know who's causing this, who it is that's against you, then you don't know which direction to aim. The fate of countries used to be determined on the battlefield, but now it's determined on the media landscape and who can reach the most people. At the time of this recording, we're 1 week before the 5th of November, and I'm really hoping they don't get their machine Muppet in there, because everybody in that little group has already said that the number one threat to America is people talking online. They can't have anyone that isn't repeating their talking points reaching millions of Americans. There are no viral videos anymore. Anything gets 100, couple 100,000 views now, it gets checked. I don't really keep up with the music industry anymore, but the other day I did see a page full of music videos, and all of them were like 150, 180 million views. In reality, any creator that is any good should have 1 or 2 videos that are like that. But unless you're an industry insider, then no, they won't let anything run like that. So there are a lot of things that I disagree with about the tycoon, especially the fact that he takes all kinds of money and supports Yeezy. But the machine has done a full-on Matrix attack against him and even silenced him to where he couldn't speak to the public. So right now, he's basically our only shot at getting things back to the way they were a decade ago. In 2014, had Hurricane Helene happened, you could have looked up North Carolina flooding and you would have had firsthand accounts of who was there and what happened. You would have had millions and millions of views to videos of people saying, okay, this church right here at this location is accepting donations. We need this done. We need that done. Everybody could have coordinated using this beautiful tool that we used to have. A decade ago, there really was a big awakening happening, and they knew it. So they took control of it and have broken it. So I don't know if the tycoon will actually do anything to fix it, but at least there's a slight bit of chance there. With the other side, there's no chance, and they're definitely going to start cracking down on anybody that says anything outside of what they want heard. Anyway, that's about enough out of me. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. I'll catch you on the next one. Static out.